Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame was officially created on August the 2nd, 1973, and was initially located in Edmonton. At first, the hall consisted of a series of exhibits. In 1992, the hall found a permanent home with the opening of the impressive Reynolds Alberta Museum at Wetaskiwin, just 65 kilometers south of Edmonton. Today, visitors to the museum can marvel at both the extensive Reynolds collection of vintage aircraft, as well as striking displays of members of the Hall and recipients of the Belt of Orion over the past 4 decades. Au fil des ans, ce musée du transport et de l'industrie s'est forgé une solide réputation d'envergure internationale et abrite aujourd'hui une des collections d'avions d'époque parmi les plus importantes du Canada. Nous profitons d'ailleurs de cette soirée pour rendre hommage et remercier la ville de Wetaskiwin pour son appui indéfectible au Panthéon de l'aviation et à son rayonnement à l'échelle du pays. Looking back over the 40 years, the Hall of Fame has certainly lived up to its raison d'être, keeping our aviation heroes, leaders, and innovators in the hearts and minds of Canadians. The Hall has striven relentlessly, with passion and dedication, to honor those individuals and organizations that have made outstanding contributions to aviation and aerospace in Canada, and to collect, preserve, exhibit, and interpret artifacts and documents that inspire and educate Canadians from coast to coast. Throughout, its inspiration came from those men and women who, as our motto states, unselfishly showed the way. Vous pouvez contribuer à cette noble cause en devenant des amis du Panthéon. By becoming a friend of the Hall, you can support directly an organization that keeps alive the pioneering spirit of those who have made and who continue to make Canadian aviation one of the most respected in the world. And now, I take great pleasure in inviting to the lectern the chairman of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame, Mr. Tom Appleton. Tom will share his personal thoughts on the remarkable milestone we are celebrating this evening. And he has a surprise that will certainly be remembered as one of the highlights of our 40th. Mesdames et Messieurs, Tom Appleton.
Thank you, Denis. Honourable members of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame, inductees for 2013, Major General Hood, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Board of Directors of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame, it gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to our 40th Annual Induction Gala at the Canadian Aviation and Space Museum. This 40th year is indeed a significant milestone in the history of the Hall of Fame. Its members have been both witnesses and actors in the extraordinary evolution of Canadian aviation over the past 4 decades. It's also particularly notable for the aerospace sector, as one of our inducted members, astronaut Chris Hadfield, again made history recently as the first Canadian to command an expedition to the International Space Station. Avec ses collègues et membres de l'industrie, Chris ne cesse de repousser les frontières du savoir, de la science et de la technologie. Ces pionniers des temps modernes nous inspirent et nous rendent fiers de ce riche héritage de Canadiens œuvrant au bien-être de l'humanité. Closer to home here on Earth, Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame has 2 missions, basically. First of all, the Hall is dedicated, as Denis has said, to the preservation of the legacy of those who have made outstanding contributions to Canada and the world through our aviation and space heritage. And another mission of the Hall is to inspire and motivate our youth to take an interest in the sciences in engineering and aviation in general as a world of career opportunity. The Air Cadet League of Canada, the 1989 winner of the Hall's prized Belt of Orion Award, continues to make an enormous contribution to youth development, providing inspiration and leadership training across the broad spectrum of opportunities offered through aerospace. It's no accident that many honored here tonight, including such people as Chris Hadfield, were through their teen years proud members of the Royal Canadian Air Cadets. They each found an outlet for their youthful energy, their enthusiasm, and a passion for aviation and aerospace subjects while developing leadership skills in this great organization. Nous tenons à rendre hommage à l'Organisation des cadets de l'aviation royale du Canada, représentée ici ce soir par certains d'entre eux, l'escadrille 50e, l'escadrille de l'aviation du Musée de l'aviation espace, et nous souhaitons à tous nos meilleurs vœux de succès pour l'avenir. I'd also like to thank, on your behalf, our hardworking induction dinner committee who produced tonight's function and brought it all together. Rosella Bjornson, Denise Chagnon, Ken Dandy, Blaine Fowler, Jamie McIntyre, Eileen McKeever, John Morris, James Morrison, and Robert Porter. John Chalmers, the Hall of Fame historian, researched and produced the content for tonight's videos and presentations. Merci à tous pour votre solide travail de l'équipe et de votre bonne humeur. The Board of Directors would also like to thank our presenting sponsoring companies and organizations who have made this event possible. Without your support, both financially and otherwise, we could not continue to recognize the heritage of those who have contributed so much to Canada's aerospace development. Ladies and gentlemen, to get us started this evening in honoring the members being inducted into Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame for 2013, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce a man who actually needs no introduction, Hall of Fame member and Canada's Man of the Moment, Chris Hadfield.
Bonsoir. Ici Chris Hadfield, à bord et commandant de la Station Spatiale Internationale, speaking to you from Earth orbit. Ce soir we are honoring some of the legends of Canadian aviation, people who have pushed back the limits of what's possible in the skies over Canada, as well as in her businesses and in inspiring her youth. From on board this spaceship, I salute each of you. You've all served Canada so well, from sterling leadership in wartime to prescient pursuit of new business, from opening innovative opportunity in the North for air cargo, to inventing an aircraft that became a world standard, and from turning a handful of small local air services into a global airline. Each of our recipients tonight is so obviously worthy of recognition in Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame. Victor Bennett, Stocky Edwards, Frank Henley, John Sanford, and the thousands of good people that made up Canadian Pacific Airlines. On behalf of the crew of the orbiting research vessel ISS, I congratulate you and thank you for all that you've done and the difference that you have made for all of Canada. So enjoy this, the 40th induction gala. And everyone take this moment in time to look around the museum, to look back at all we have accomplished, to revel in the wonderful company gathered together, and most importantly, onwards, towards the bright future that awaits us, reflected in the eyes of the air cadets that are there this evening. Congratulations, félicitations à tous, Godspeed, and soft landings.
So as you've seen, our 5 inductees have already been escorted out on stage. So in sequence, I will invite them to step forward and receive the recognition from Major General Michael Hood and Tom Appleton. And then they'll share their thoughts on the occasion of their induction into Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame. So, we begin with Canadian Pacific Airlines Limited, represented this evening by Don Carty. So Don, if you can step up to the plate with General Hood and Tom Appleton.
I will send this to Don Carty. Well done, Don. Hi. Great day.
Well, thank you very much, and I want to start off by dispelling the rumor that I wore this kilt in the hopes of getting to participate in the salute to the Piper. That's not true. But I do, in all seriousness, want to thank everyone on behalf of the thousands of really wonderful employees that were a part of this great airline, Canadian Pacific Airlines. We have a few of those employees with us tonight, and you saw them when they stood. Most of them, however, have either passed away or are enjoying a well-earned retirement. There are a few who remain toiling in this wonderful industry that we all love. You know, I've had the unique privilege and honor in my 40-some years in this business since I started at Air Canada as a junior analyst to have been involved as chairman or president of a number of great airlines: Canadian Pacific, American Airlines, Hawaiian Airlines, Virgin America Airlines, Porter Airlines, and of course as part of a series of acquisitions that American and Canadian Pacific did, Eastern Provincial Airways, Nordair, TWA, Reno, and AirCal. Airlines from the largest in the world to new startups. And I can tell you from the bottom of my heart that there is no airline that I've been prouder to be associated with than Canadian Pacific Airlines. This was an airline with a great legacy of service and innovation, with achievements far too numerous to mention this evening. But from its founding in May of 1942 through the combination of the 10 constituent companies to the development of a truly national domestic carrier over 40 years, and that in spite of years of regulatory impediments to doing so, to the unbelievable vision of Grant McConaughey and the development of an international route system spanning 5 continents, to the operational excellence of this airline in maintenance and flight and dispatch. This airline was a true pioneer and a great leader. And from a service point of view, Canadian Pacific's product on the Transcon and on their international routes were second to none in the world. This company played an enormous role in the economic and commercial development of this country, and of course proudly displayed the Canada Goose around the globe. But what makes me proudest of my association with Canadian Pacific is the people of the airline. In every function and in every activity, we were surrounded by colleagues that had a passion for our business, people who loved to come to work, people dedicated to operational excellence, to safety, and to running an airline with great integrity. People who were proud of what they did, and people who genuinely cared about our customers and wanted them to have a memorable experience on our airline. More than any other single thing, that is what differentiated Canadian Pacific Airlines, and I dedicate tonight's award to all of them, and thank them all for a job well done. Thank you all.
He really does look good in a kilt, doesn't he? Very good, Don. We move on to Vic Bennett. So, Vic, if you would stand and receive your certificate and award. Pinning the medal is not that easy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a great honor. Tremendous honor. Good evening. At the very outset, I must say that I am greatly appreciative of the honor on being nominated as a member of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame, and I am most grateful to those whose letters of support, which were submitted as part of the process. I am most grateful for their generosity. In particular, I want to thank my daughter Joanna, who nominated me. To do this, she needed background information to complete the submission, and completely under false pretenses, using the excuse that her daughter was involved in a high school project and a history of her grandparents was needed. I obediently bundled up a whole bunch of clippings, certificates, pictures, news bulletins, all that sort of thing, put it in a big envelope, and mailed it to her. The next thing I knew was the news that Joanna had nominated me to the Hall, which she informed me, oddly enough, on Mother's Day. My response was to thank her, to advise her that although her effort was greatly appreciated, not to hold her breath. Her only response was that she was not particularly impressed with my high school marks, which were all part of the package I'd sent her. Some months later, I was totally surprised, but very pleased, when Chairman Tom Appleton called me in early October last year to say that I had been selected. By coincidence, he got me on my cell phone when I was at the local landfill, disposing of some gardening refuse, a gloomy place, but I must say, his news can brighten the day somewhat. Looking back over many years, I was a lucky beneficiary of a series of interconnected events, which, when all linked together, allowed me the great opportunity of playing a part, a very minor part, in the growth of Canada's aerospace industry. Back in 1943, my father arranged a summertime job for me in refueling military airplanes in Gander, Newfoundland, my home province. I was about 15. Gander Airport was then the largest paved surface in the world, I believe, with rows and rows of B-24s being ferried to Europe by 20-year-old pilots with less than 200 hours of flight time. That summer made a deep impression on me, and it oriented me towards aviation. So some years later, while at university, I applied for flight training under the University Air Training Plan. There were many hundreds of applicants from universities across Canada, so I was really fortunate to be selected. 3 years later, with a commission in my pilot's wings, I began a phase in my life as an auxiliary pilot over approximately 13 years with 2 squadrons, one in Montreal and one in Vancouver. It was a great experience. Flying jets on weekends, school during the week, plus the princely sum of $30 a month flying pay. For a young fella, it couldn't be better than that. I shall ever be grateful to the RCAF for those great years. My luck continued. I met a man by the name of John Timmons in a bar in Montreal, and we became great friends. It was his vision to form an aviation service company at Montreal Airport, the purpose of which was to serve the incipient business aviation community. He asked me to join him. Problem was that business flying in Canada was in its infancy, so those were very difficult years. But out of that came a company that was in the inception of an aerospace sector which was to become and continues to be a major component in civil aviation. Corporate aviation is today a huge and dynamic sector operating internationally, and Canada plays a very significant part in both airframes, engines, and systems. In 1974, the company was sold to a U.S. corporation, and I was sold with it. And I was given the chance of managing it. It was a big opportunity and a great experience. Some years later, for a variety of business reasons, I suggested to my owners that the Canadian division should be sold, to which they agreed. So with the assistance of a venture capital company led by Stephen Kauser, who, by chance, I had met on a goose hunting trip, we were able to put up the money which enabled the company to be repatriated. That repatriation created Inotech Aviation. That was in '74. This new Canadian-owned company was able to take advantage of the amazing growth in corporate aviation, which has taken place over the next 2 decades. For me, it was a great experience surviving the bad times, leveraging the good times. The company was made up of engineers, designers, aircraft technicians and tradesmen, servicing personnel and pilots, marketing and sales personnel, administrators, and many other committed aviation people across Canada dedicated not only to our company, but the industry in which we all worked. Many are here tonight. The result was the building of a network of facilities and operations at major airports across Canada and one base in the United States, serving hundreds of Canadian and international clients. It all worked out very well. But the greatest luck I had in all of this was meeting a young lady named Connie Sear in Vancouver, a maritimer, a nurse, and by coincidence, a CPA stewardess, holding the rank of flying officer in the Air Force Reserve. We met at the Sea Island Officers' Mess. 6 children, 10 grandchildren, all of whom together with other family members are here this evening, a tremendous effort and greatly appreciated by me. And 57 years later, this lady is responsible for making a whole lot of what I've been talking about happen. She was always there, and her advice and support was invaluable. In closing, a word about the Hall. I am convinced that the Hall plays an important part in familiarizing Canadians with the importance of Canada's aerospace industry, which, both in war and peace, has been so significant and which continues to offer young Canadians so many great opportunities. I was just plain lucky to have benefited from all of this. Nothing has changed. The future is bright. I encourage the Hall to continue its good work in advocating this industry to all Canadians. Many thanks to you all.
And many thanks to you, Vic. And now we go on to Stocky Edwards, who probably has some fascinating stories of his own to tell us about. Your turn. Your turn. Oh, I'm sorry. My mistake. He told me he was a bit shy, but...
No. I thought you said go ahead. Thank you very much. Hello, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Frank, let's just move over here.
My grandson from the U.S.
You should hang on to it while I keep it to you.
Hello. Mes chers amis, tonight is a great night for me and my family, my tribe as I call them. Yay over there, but I have to stick to business. First of all, I would like to thank our PMC, our MC, did a terrific job. Denis Chagnon, wonderful. In fact, Superman. To our chairman, Tom Appleton, and his board of directors, my thanks. And especially to John Talmers, Rosella Bjornson, Irma Quisel. They all did great things to help us come here and present what we have tonight. Next, I would like to congratulate the other inductees. They sit behind us. Frank Henley, Victor Bennett, John Sanford, for the Bell Orient for Canadian Pacific Airlines. At this time also, I'd like a special mention for Vintage Wings of Canada under Mike Potter. Under Mike Potter and his 2IC, Rob Fleck at Gatineau. And Ted Lemieux at Red Feather in Calgary. And now for the nominations that were made for me. I have a number of them here. If you'll bear with me. First of all, there were Tom Burns, Claude LaFrance, Bobby Middlemas, Tina Kirkpatrick, the lady in charge of all cadets across Canada, and Mike Potter again, Jim Brass, a dentist from Comox, Bill Carr, Paul Manson, and General Ray Heno, one of my good friends, Jerry Gagne, who is not here today, and Don Connolly, the artist. Sid Burrows from Comox, Michel Levine, the artist and the writer of a number of books, and incidentally, he has some books here tonight, if you would care to look at them. Kitty Hawk's Over the Sands, and Barbara Hayner, another writer, has her book here, Desert Hawk. We also have Wayne Ralph. I don't know if Ralph was here. Well, hello, Wayne, anyway. Mac McGregor and Eric Smith, and any others that may have helped. You can't come here alone, and it's a wonderful thing to happen to anyone, as it's already been said by the other inductees. I want to say hello to John Duncan and his new bride. He's a federal minister for Vancouver Island North. I have some good friends from Comox, John and Teddy Glover. From Vancouver, Bob and Liz Smith. Victoria, I should have my friend here, Son Burns, F-18 pilot, my F-18 pilot. But maybe his wife is here. At my table, this is a very important thing, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. I have most of my kin. A lot of them live here in Ontario. We have some from the United States and some from Comox. First of all, I'd like to introduce my wife, Tony. My daughter Dorothy, my son Jim, and my granddaughter Jessie, and my great-granddaughter, where's that little beauty? Olivia. In addition, I have a niece from Vancouver area, Lynn DeVoe, and her husband, Bob. Lynn was the daughter of Jeff Northcott, one of the famous fighter pilots. And to all, I'd like to thank every one of you for being here and being so nice. And I end with, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Stocky. And now again, Frank. Your turn, Frank.
Stay right there. Just let me give you a medal. Just come right over here. I'm going to give you that nice medal. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It's okay. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Francois Henley. I'm Frank Henley's son, and I'm very privileged and honored to be here and say just a few words on my father's behalf. I'll try to keep it short, but it's not easy with such a life of accomplishment. I think for me, the story begins when, as a young man, just turned 18, he pretty much took his last dollars, his only dollars, and went from Marseille to Ontario, and I think that was touched upon by the video. But amazingly, he didn't speak a word of English. And I hope this is not so embellished, but I believe this is true, is that they told him, look, you have to learn English. And he did so in 3 weeks, at least to enough of an extent to start the coursework. And I think that just shows the perseverance that somebody like my father, and of course all the people here that are inductees, actually do. They overcome, they adapt and overcome, and I think that's amazing. That's amazing. So for me, as a very young boy, the first time I really saw my father's work and efforts, long nights and days, was when he burnt out almost every hand calculator that went into the house. First, it was mechanical devices, and they made strange smells when they burnt out. All the relays burnt out. And the reason is doing operations in aircraft, you do things like Excel spreadsheets, but of course those computers didn't exist. So what my father did was he had these massive cells and rows and columns of numbers to try to figure out the poundage in aircraft, gasoline, whatever. He made up his own rules and figured it out. And there was calculations in the rows and columns, and he did that using these electromechanical relay calculators, which burnt out. Then he had these Nixie tube monstrosities that, as a young boy, and I majored in electrical engineering, so I was very interested in that. He burnt those out, and then the LED ones were bought and brought into the house, and I think those actually did it. So the next thing, he didn't talk much about the war, but one thing is when I went to college and I told my father that I jumped out of an airplane for fun, he was very upset at me and started showing me pictures that he actually had to parachute out of a burning aircraft, and couldn't believe why his only son would actually jump out of a perfectly good airplane. So in any event, I think after that there were a lot of work at trying to develop the James Bay Energy Project. He did a lot of work, pioneering work in the making the air transport and making it work, buying new kinds of aircraft and making sure that they worked, especially on ice runways. And so I was always interested in hearing about that from my father. In any event, I really appreciate the time, and we're very honored to receive this award. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you very much. And now, John Sanford, we'd like to hear from you.
Last, and I promise you it won't be the most.
I feel greatly honored. I'd like first, though, to recognize my daughter, Gina, who had the whole idea of putting my name forward and did all the work that was necessary to make that happen. Gina, thank you. If you're an aviation nut as I am, you realize that one of the finest things in life is having the ability and the team and the opportunity to create an aircraft from a clean sheet of paper. And what you want even more is for that to be a successful aircraft. And what you realize is it is a team that does that, and I want to share the acknowledgement that I've received tonight, the honor. I want to share that with the employees at de Havilland when I took over there. It was an opportunity made for an aerospace nutter like myself. As it said earlier on, when they were showing the video, that I came out of the UK. I married my sweetheart that I met at 16, and she tolerated me for the next umpty-ump years as we became aerospace gypsies, but more importantly, creating an airplane. I think without blushing, I can say that the Dash 8, as was designed and built in Downsview, and then carried on by Bombardier, who were great stewards of the airplane that we handed over to them when they acquired us. It is the finest turboprop aircraft that has ever been built in the world. That is, I say that without equivocation. And let me tell you why. First of all, it's been in production now for almost 40 years. It has sold more turboprops, things with propellers on, in the regional jet market than any other company has ever sold turboprops. When we got into the competition to build the Dash 7, build the Dash 8, I mean, after the Dash 7, it came about from a strategy. And you know, when you've got a long time going, you've got to have a strategy. You just can't walk into it and say, let's do it this week and nothing else next week. You have to have a strategy for the team, and the team has to build that strategy. Now, I came from a background that said, in the aerospace industry, you've got to have your heads in the cloud, your feet on the ground, and your hands firmly in the pocket of the government. Now, we were owned by the government. There were lots of different pockets, and none of them had any money in it. Anyway, there has been about 1,200, a little over 1,200 Dash 8s built since that first aircraft was turned out. And that's more than, and I'm going to name a few names, and you'll all recognize them, that's more than Boeing sold 757s in the life of that airplane. It's more than Airbus sold A300s, a lot more. It's more than, if you have been around for a while, you'll remember the Fokker Friendship F-27. It's more than twice the amount that the F-27 was ever sold. It was more, but only a few more, than MD-80s that we've all flown around and still do if you were with American Airlines. And it continues to go on. As I say, great stewardship by Bombardier. But the thing that it amounts to is that when we sat down in the late 1970s to define this airplane, and there was a team, and we're a small team, we defined an aircraft which was based upon the knowledge that came from de Havilland, came from the Dash 7, came from everything else. But what was even more important, we went to our owners, the government, in 1981, sorry, yes, it was 1981. And we gave them a business plan, and we said, we will fly it, sorry, we said, first of all, we will roll it out on this date. We will first fly it on this date, we will certify it on this date, and we will deliver the first aircraft on a specific date. All those were in black, and the government bought it, gave us no money, said, go ahead, kids, do what you can down there at Havilland. But that team that I was fortunate enough to lead met all of those dates but one. The date we didn't meet was the first delivery. And that was because Bill Bennett, who was then the Premier of Ontario, couldn't make the dates that we were ready to deliver, so we had to put it off for 3 weeks. We did this, and people have said, well, look, it's a small airplane, isn't it? You should be able to do it quickly. But think of it. It's got the same number of wings that Boeing has got with its 787. It's got the same number of engines they have. It has the same kind of avionics in it. It has a landing gear like they do, and it has to meet all the requirements of the F-8 like they do. And Boeing were 2.5 years late over their forecast of the first flight. Airbus with its A380, 2 years. We met it on schedule in Downsview. A great, great team. And I think, although I'm here being recognized as the fellow that led it, I led what I regard as the best team that there was in aviation. And I ran a number of companies, and it was the best team that I ran, and I think it was, I matched them up against somebody else. The only thing was we were too small. You know, there were only about 350 engineers and designers that were there. But what a great accomplishment, and what a pleasure and a privilege it was to lead it. I go around the airfields today, and I look around. My wife and I have opportunities to travel all over the place. Our friends who came in from Australia to be at this event this evening, they came in, they flew between Canberra and Sydney on a Dash 8. We were in South Africa the other day, my wife and I, Dash 8s all day on the airfield. I still get excited about it. Anyway, thank you for listening to me and my particular views on what that team in Downsview created all those years ago. I think Canada should be proud of that effort. We're not a jet. People don't, you know, jets are what it is, but it's still an airplane, and it's still got to be safe, and the same regulations. Thank you.
Okay, lots of emotions. It's not over yet. I'd like to now ask our chairman, Tom Appleton, to introduce our guest of honor this evening. Tom?
Thank you, Denis. Well, tonight our guest of honor has ordered me not to speak to his bio that I was quietly rehearsing, I thought, without him seeing me. So, I mean, having been an air cadet, I managed to take orders from major generals. However, I'm going to countermand it and do a little bit of it. It may be interesting to you to know that Major General Michael Hood began his military career in the infantry as a guardsman with the Canadian Grenadier Guards before enrolling in the regular force and receiving his Air Combat Systems Officer wings in '88. Most of his flying then was on in the Air Force on C-130s, Hercules, etc. And one final bit from his bio that you must know is that by his own admission, in his spare time, General Hood plods along as a middle-of-the-pack age grouper in triathlon. I thought I couldn't resist throwing that one in for you. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me very great pleasure to introduce to you the Deputy Commander of the Royal Canadian Air Force, Major General Michael Hood.
Thanks, everyone. It's actually quite humbling to be up here amongst such great Canadian heroes. So I'd ask you just to honor me for a few minutes, and I'd like to recognize them and a few people in our Air Force as well. Distingués nouveaux membres du Panthéon de l'Aviation du Canada, Mesdames et Messieurs, it has been an amazing evening, and I'm truly honored to be here tonight in the company of such stars in the aviation galaxy. And what a thrill to hear from RCF alumnus and Canada's highest flying aviator, Colonel Chris Hadfield, a very hard act to follow. En ma qualité de commandant adjoint de l'aviation royale canadienne, je suis aussi ravi de constater que 3 des personnes intronisées ce soir ont servi au sein de l'ERC. But in reality, all of the new members tonight have an RCAF connection. Stocky, Frank, you both flew dangerous and challenging missions in the Second World War and contributed directly to Allied victory in Europe. And Vic, I'm impressed that your passion for aviation was so strong at the age of 15, around the same age of many of the Air Cadets here tonight. I understand you got a job refueling aircraft and fueling your passion. John, working with Avi Rowe on the Arrow, you'll always be considered RCAF family. And Canadian Pacific Airways, winner of the Belt of Orion, CP was also a leader in opening the North alongside the Royal Canadian Air Force. And I'm pleased to report that the RCF is once again strongly focused northwards, ensuring we can operate effectively in that magnificent, vast, and challenging region. CP Air also notably supported the Korean War mission that you heard in the video. And tonight's recognition has added meaning as we celebrate the year of the Korean War veteran and the 60th anniversary of the signing of that armistice. All of you are heroes, and we, all of us here tonight and across this country, a grateful nation, thank you for your contributions. I'd also like to spend a moment just acknowledging today's airmen and airwomen of the RCAF. Unsung heroes to me, men and women who dedicate themselves to the success of the Royal Canadian Air Force, totally and without reservation. L'an dernier, Charlie Bouchard vous a parlé de la campagne menée en Libye et de son succès extraordinaire. And although our combat mission in Afghanistan is now over, a number of people in the Royal Canadian Air Force continue to support the NATO training mission, advising, in particular, the fledgling Afghan Air Force. We continue to provide airlift and move people and supplies in and out of theater every day. You may recall our most prominent mission this year, helping the French government airlift troops, equipment and supplies in and out of Mali. This spring, we deployed CF-18s to Iceland in support of NATO's airborne surveillance and interception mission there. And of course, closer to home, we remain deeply committed to our no-fail NORAD and our vital search and rescue missions. Et nous participons de façon continue à de nombreux exercices nationaux et internationaux. From a heritage point, we are delighted once again to be known as the Royal Canadian Air Force. And we've been working on another number of projects related to this, including a new crest for the RCAF, capturing our history, which will be unveiled later this year. We've also taken steps to re-emphasize the importance of our history and heritage in our Air Force culture. Paul Bader, an archivist with the Ontario Heritage Foundation, said, "Heritage helps us understand the past, gives meaning to the present, and influences the future. Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame is a national leader in preserving and promoting our aviation heritage and inspiring Canadians, especially our youth. My thanks to each and every one of you involved in the Hall of Fame for your belief, your commitment in recognizing the importance of our heritage, and for your passion, your dedication, and your ideals. Congratulations on celebrating your 40th anniversary, and I wish you all the best for the next 40 years. Lastly, thanks to everyone here tonight. You're here because you're believers as well. And last, but certainly not least, Stocky, Frank, Vic, John, and Don, thank you for everything you have done and continue to do for Canada. It has been an honor and a privilege to be with you tonight. Je vous remercie de m'avoir invité à célébrer avec vous. Thank you very much.
So for those who would like a picture with Chris, we have him here. We'll bring him on stage and you can sit or stand next to him and take a picture of yourselves. One final reminder, the inductees, we'd like to have you here for the group shot right after the ceremony. And for the members of the hall, we have an AGM tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the McDonald Room of the Lord Elgin Hotel. So that's it. Merci beaucoup and see you next year. Bye.